Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm looking at Sergio Aragones, Massacres Mark. Got a fun one today. I love humor books, and Sergio Aragones is one of the best, creator of Groo, MAD Magazine illustrator, and he's bringing it all into this one shot from Marvel. But before I get into that, I just want to take a second to say thanks to all the viewer support. Every like, comment, and subscription is appreciated. So if you're enjoying this positive comic content, please consider hitting thumbs up, and comments are always encouraged. And hey, if you haven't already, why not hit subscribe so you don't miss any future videos? I created this channel to entertain, inform, and maybe even inspire you to read some comics. If you think that's a good message and other comic fans need that in their feeds, then your likes, shares, and subs tell the YouTube algorithm to put it in front of them. Now, let's get back to this book. All right, I already kind of gave a little bio of what Sergio Aragones is known for. And in 1996, Marvel, I guess, invited him to do this. And there's actually a follow-up one with DC, but we're just looking at the Marvel one today. It has a pretty cool wraparound cover. It's the typical Aragones cartooning style that he's well known for. Big noses, which kind of look funny in like the Spider-Man mask, and I don't see Iron Man on the cover here, but Iron Man has a similar one too. Something to think about, actually, with no Iron Man on here. This is 1996. Iron Man is a B-list character at this point, which is why he did not make the cover. But the goofy-looking Giant Man did to represent the Avengers. I think this cover, when you open up for the wraparound, has a very like MAD Magazine feel to it, because this is just the front, but then the back side, it's actually like a mural that Aragones is painting on a wall, and he's knocked over a paint can on top of the police officer. This is Mark Evanier. He's going to write the book, and he's slinking off to the side. And even says written by Mark Evanier down there. So anyway, I like the cover. I like Galactus. My kids like the humor books like What The, but when they saw this, I pulled it out to read, and they were looking at the back over there. What happened to the Silver Surfer? Because he makes these big top-heavy bodies and stuff. There's some pretty cool splash pages in this, though, actually. And the Surfer has a good one. Something else pretty interesting about this book is the different inkers that are on it. Although there's some big names on here: George Perez, Joe Sennett, Ramita Sr., Steve Leola, Mary Severin, Al Milgram, Terry Austin, Joe Rubinstein. I didn't really notice too much different in the inking as the book goes along, though. It's neat that all those names are on there, but I don't think they did anything to try to put their own stamp on Aragones' pencils. Still, kind of neat that all of them worked on this book with him. I should say this is a double-sized book with no ads other than the inside covers. So they really gave him full reign. And it had, I think, a $3.50 cover price. So for 1996... yeah, $3.50 cover price. 1996, this was kind of a pricier end book, most things were still at like $2.25 at that point. So, double-sized, nice. Of course, most of the books had this kind of paper at this point, though, I guess. That was kind of becoming standard practice. But June 1996, also, this is like right when, Onslaught was wrapping up, and Heroes Reborn was about to start. So kind of interesting. They're giving Aragones here and Mark Evanier a chance to play in the sandbox before, the whole Marvel universe just gets completely upended. This first part reminds me of The Mighty Magnor, which is Aragones and Evanier's book for Malibu that they did, where two comic book creators were, struggling to get work or struggling to keep work or whatever. But this time it's actually Aragones and Evanier themselves, and they're going to the Marvel offices. When they arrive, nobody's there. Mark sits down at a computer to write. Aragones sees a memo saying everything's late, and he has this brilliant idea to get all the books caught up on time because he's so fast. Evanier falls asleep at the table. There's some good jokes in here, too, about like, I'm going to go ask Mark. He's good with dialogue, especially in the books he writes. So Aragones gets to work, and we got to start with the Watcher, almost like a what if or, some such. Pretty funny looking Watcher here, and there's some jokes here about natural disasters, and then also daytime talk TV being a natural disaster as well, which was much bigger in the 90s, I suppose. We're going to start off with Namor and meet the main antagonist of this book, the seagoing soarer, who you think this is just going to be something made up for Namor just himself, but it's the antagonist of the whole issue. Some pretty funny stuff right here with the Fantastic Four. Basically, they're all trying to take turns quitting, and they can't decide whose turn it is to quit. And so every page, here's the Thing's quitting. He's like, you can't quit. Why not? Because it's my turn to quit. So I'm quitting the Fantastic Four. And then Sue basically says the same thing. She's like, you can't quit. And I'll tell you why not. Because I'm quitting the Fantastic Four. And then Reed shows up and is like, I'm the leader and none of you all can quit. And they start saying, aren't you dead? I thought you were supposed to be dead. Like, I think he came back an issue or two ago. Sue says, I think he came back in a recent issue, but I'm not sure. Neither am I. So I guess there's only one thing I can do. I'm quitting the Fantastic Four. It's just an ongoing joke throughout this part. Then these other characters start showing up and saying, I'll be your fourth member. And three characters show up, and the Thing says, you can't all be part of the Fantastic Four, because then there'd be 6 of us. And they're like, well, in that case, we're all quitting the Fantastic Four. Doom shows up. We get to see Doom drawn by Aragones. Everybody loves a Doom appearance by a different random artist, right? More jokes here about Doom coming to kill the Fantastic Four and then trying to join the Fantastic Four. And they're basically playing on this like trope of the Fantastic Four over the years. I mean, mostly the Thing was quitting all the time in the early issues, but everybody's taken a turn quitting the Fantastic Four at some point. And also dying. Every member of the Fantastic Four has died at least once. But then you got some just kind of funny scenes here of the Torch. I like this part of, taste fire, Doom, and seething with fury, the Human Torch unleashes a torrent of fireballs. And Doom's dialogue, they can see that, you idiot writer. So the whole thing's going to be playing with the fourth wall, pointing out generally just tropes of Marvel Comics throughout the whole history of the line. And here comes our seafaring soarer again, or seagoing soarer. And he comes in always like riding on like a wave. It makes no sense. Like, where's this water coming from? It never makes sense. But this book isn't supposed to make sense. So he comes in and basically abducts the 3 remaining members of the Fantastic Four, minus Reed. And now we cut back to Aragones, who's saying, okay, I'm done with Fantastic Four. Time to work on the next book, Spider-Man. This is about the only time you see this kind of caption. Just assume that when the characters change, he's moving on to another title, because he's trying to get all the books caught up for the month. I don't love his Spider-Man. He's supposed to be goofy and stuff, but the nose is distracting. And the top-heavy body, which I'm okay with that for this cartooning style, but it reminds me of the character Alice the Goon in Popeye. So a little distracting on that, but pretty funny dialogue here of Spider-Man complaining about his life. And he goes through an origin recap. Neat, splash page. This is more or less a splash page with his memory bubbles. And it goes through a very abbreviated version of Spider-Man's origin. Pretty accurate. Just, there's definitely tongue-in-cheek about a lot of it. It continues on, and then it's kind of making the quitting joke here, too, about the Fantastic Four, which is a reoccurring one. He makes a joke about Aunt May finally dying at the age of 137. So I guess this was Spider-Man 400. The death of Aunt May had happened around this time, so I guess she was dead at this point. But as he tries to quit being Spider-Man, he realizes, I'm missing out on all the toy merchandise and t-shirts and money and stuff. I better go back to get it. And there's a homeless person already claiming it. Anything in the dumpster is my property, clown. Fun little panel here, too. Cartooning panel of, I guess, the Sinister Six. Just as villains in general. There's a joke here. Take that, Goblin, and don't let me catch you getting your own comic again. Because the Green Goblin, there was a Green Goblin comic at this time, too. Although it wasn't Norman Osborn. and the character was kind of trying to be a hero. He was just some guy that stumbled onto one of Norman's hidden caches of goblin stuff. Kind of the same way the Hobgoblin did, but instead of saying like, oh, I'm going to be a bad guy, he tried to be a good guy for a while. Eventually, I think he becomes the new Hobgoblin in more recent years, like last 10 years or so. But in 1996, when the character was first introduced, he was a good guy, Green Goblin. Dr. Octopus shows up. You got to have a clone reference. They didn't go too heavy into the clone reference. I mean, they show all these other spider characters. There's a spider armor, a couple different symbiotes, I guess. And then there's your seagoing soarer. They have to say it over and over again. And even I've had trouble keeping up. I want to say seafaring. Seagoing soarer. So he takes Spider-Man too. Oh, I guess we did get at least one more. All right, on to the Silver Surfer next. This is a fun page. I like this. I mean, it's funny looking. Like I said earlier, my kids thought, what happened to the Silver Surfer? Why does he look so funny? I don't think they realized that this was a humor book. So this really kind of took them by surprise. Something I find interesting on this too is that they didn't try to make the colors particularly cartoony. This is how like Silver Surfer would have been colored at the time. So they didn't like take it in some other direction. And Silver Surfer's just bemoaning how terrible his existence is, and he doesn't make a joke. Sometimes I do get to be drawn by John Buscema, and my life is so terrible. And Doctor Strange, I'm tired of your pathetic self-pity. I deserve this. And he starts pining about Shala Ball, who's dumped him at least 17 times in the last 25 issues. And he's like, where is Galactus? Why won't he come threaten my existence? He'll be along. He has it in his contract. The first time he appears in a story, he has to get a full-page panel. He must have Mike Ovitz as his agent. That's a reference I don't get. If you get that reference, let me know. But he's right. There's your full-page Galactus spread. Pretty fun. I like seeing Sergio do this. I mean, he does a pretty detailed planning here. Look at all the people. And the Surfer says, where have you been? Do you have any idea the demands on me? Whenever a comic is desperate for a plot, I have to show up and threaten to consume a planet. I don't mind the superhero books, but last month, in an issue of Barbie, they had me threatening to devour her dream house. Now, I do know Marvel did put out a Marvel comic book for a little bit. I don't know if it made it all the way to 1996. If somebody knows if they actually did that in a Barbie comic, I would like to know that, and I would like to find that issue. I actually don't doubt it if they did it. Have it be a dream of hers or something. So then, of course, well, Galactus is like, I gotta go. I'm too much demands on me. I gotta be in another book. And then here's your seagoing soarer again. I like his glove. You can kind of get a better look at it there. Almost looks like fins in a way. And he packs up the Silver Surfer. He just grabs him and goes off with him. And he says, I feel like I won an Oscar. Oh, we get the Hulk. Finally, the Hulk. My favorite. We're going to see the Sergio Aragones Hulk like this, right? No, we're going to get the gray version, which I love the gray Hulk. And I find it funny that they went with the gray Hulk in this because 1996, he wasn't gray anymore. And he hadn't been gray for about 5 years, really. He was the Professor Hulk. They have him speaking in long-winded dialogue with a big vocabulary here. And he's explaining how he's changed and stuff. And, you know, it's funny because then they go on about his muscles changing every page and panel. And he's like, I haven't had the same consistent musculature panel to panel in years. Essentially, he does all this flexing. And they kind of make fun of, like, artists of the time. A couple instances in this book. They make fun of, like, artists drawing for the splash, drawing just for the poses and stuff, and not for the storytelling, without, like, actually saying, like, artists today don't understand storytelling, but they do make several jabs at the art being very just visual driven and not story driven. Next up is the Avengers. Cap has put himself back on ice. They do a little recap of Cap coming out of ice to join the Avengers back in the day. You've got a modern-looking Avengers here with goofy-looking Giant Man costume, goofy-looking Hercules costume, Quicksilver's still pretty standard, and Black Widow pretty standard. I'm surprised they didn't put them in the jackets. They wore jackets in the 90s. I like this panel, though. It's fun to see Aragones do stuff like this. I want more of that. And that's part of the appeal of this book, really, is to see fun stuff like this. And the Silver Surfer page and Galactus page. So they get Cap out of this ice that he's put himself back in. And they're like, why would you do that? And he says, to be in this world of sleazy politicians and unscrupulous TV evangelists, a world where the rich get richer while the poor starve. And they all just kind of look at him like, oh, maybe you're right. And here comes our seagoing soarer who busts in to get the Avengers, and they've all put themselves on ice. And it says, do not open till Xmas 2099. There's a joke here about Rush Limbaugh, too. Rush says hunger is anecdotal, past the squab. I'm sure around him it is. So you got to mix in a little bit of their politics, making fun of politicians being greedy for money, TV evangelists being greedy for... This is MAD Magazine right here. Now we got to save the X-Men for near the last, right? All this dialogue is typical X-Men, of somebody sneaking around the X-Mansion with all this just nonsense narration. And it turns out it's the guy coming to read the meter. Well, they turn on the light, and of course everybody's there. The Phoenix shall not die or be reborn in this short. There's also been this joke the whole time going on about trapped in a world they never made. And it's like, who lives in a world they made anyway? And pretty much everybody has that line. It's just the utilities guy coming to read the meter. And he says that they have a $3 million electric bill. And he's like, they wouldn't turn the lights off on us. And they do. And this almost seems very contemporary. Another human-spawned attempt to ostracize us from the mainstream of society. Oh, the agony of being a persecuted minority. This feels very contemporary in today's climate of things to me. I feel like this panel would work in a humor book just as well today. And then the utilities guy basically saying, I'm a minority because I'm one of the few people in Marvel that doesn't have a superpower. And then the intruder alarm goes off. They make a joke on this about let's all jump in, charge in one panel. Oh, I like these panels. They raise the value of the original when the artist sells it. And they make great t-shirts. So, I mean, and again, it is a fun panel there. Then it says something about cutting to the top. They make a joke here about it cutting their faces off. He's like rambling on about how awful their existence is as mutants. And she's like, do I sound this bad when I ramble like this? This was the funniest part of the page to me, is this down here where it cuts off. That's purposeful. It was just going to keep going and going and going. And I mean, you know, Chris Claremont was off of X-Men at this point, but everybody was still trying to write in that style following Claremont's departure. And nobody could do it, really. I mean, Claremont was self-indulgent many times, but nobody could do it quite like that. And it just came off as like needlessly wordy. And that's what this is right here. It's a good gag for people that are well inside the comic medium. Like my kids wouldn't necessarily get this joke. So it's the seafaring soarer shows up again, and he has some water from the Hudson River. Pretty good gag here. Or the East River. Is it really from the East River? Definitely. There's a mob informant in it. That's a very MAD Magazine feeling too. I actually chuckled out loud when I read that part. Nothing hit me quite as hard as that for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, this feels very MAD Magazine to me. So he takes the X-Men, and finally we're seeing like what he's up to this whole time. He's got them kind of on like a battle world. He's he went ahead and thawed out the Avengers, and he found Daredevil. Iron Man is, you know, kind of prominent now, but he's not on the cover. All right, it's time to take him on. And he's like, you know you can't do that. Why not? He's right. How is he right? What does that mean? Rule 178 of Marveldom. Whenever two or more heroes converge, they must fight for no visible reason. So then we get a big splash page of them all fighting with each other. And you get that big nose on Iron Man's mask too, which, just like on Spider-Man, it's like it doesn't work on the fully covered face as well. Although there it kind of works for me. It's like when they're facing more front or 3/4 angle. So the Seafaring Sora's plan is that he wants to eliminate all the heroes so that he can be the star of all the comics. And that's his grand plan. And they're like, oh, how are we going to stop him? So the Hulk jumps up and grabs Sergio Aragones' pen and pulls him in, and they make a joke, that won't work. He'll just let go of the pen. He's a cartoonist. They're all too cheap to go buy new supplies. And so he's like, let go of my hand. He's got me by the nib. And he pulls him in. And the big reveal is Seafaring Sora is Sergio Aragones, who just wants to do all the Marvel comics. And I forgot to point it out. Earlier they mentioned when he said, like, who are you? You'll find out on page 43. So when he says, and that was like 10, 15 pages ago, let me see your ugly face. Certainly. It's page 43. Time for me to reveal my true identity. You didn't peek, did you? And then it just kind of wraps up like that. Or the Hulk is the one that has the idea. It's like, okay, we'll draw a comic. You can be the comic. So Sergio whips it up real fast because he's fast. He's real fast. Oh, my first comic. Then the Marvel corporate guys step in. And they say, let's see that. Silly art. Figures are almost in proportion. This will never sell. I mean, there's a double joke there because these figures obviously aren't in proportion, but they're making a jab at, modern comic art of the time where everybody was just like overly built up. Anyway, so they reject it and they're like, take this stuff to Archie, my dream. And he melts. And there's several Wizard of Oz jokes in here, and they make obligatory Wizard of Oz reference. There's a joke here about keeping him in a poly bag to sell at a convention. And then they all start heading home. I can't believe they did that stupid evil twin plot. It could have been worse. They could have stooped to the old it was all a dream ending. And then you see Mark Evanier waking up at the computer. And you're like, oh, they did make it. It was just a dream by him. But no, Sergio's over here going at it to use up all the paper at Marvel where nobody was in the offices to get the books on time. Meanwhile, the whole bullpen comes back in from lunch. This character looks familiar. I don't know if he uses her for other things or what. And I don't know who these people, if these are supposed to be like real people from the Marvel office at the time. But anyway, they come back from lunch, ready to get back to work. And Sergio's used up all the paper. And so they get kicked out and they're like on the street. They treat me like that. I got good mind never to draw for them again, even if they offer money. Let's go back to your studio. You can try some other company. And then Evanier is saying it was a dream, that he did dream up the Seafaring Sora. Evil twin dream ending? That muy stupido, Mark. Marvel never print anything like that, even if I draw it. And that's the end. It's a fun book. It's a fun one if you run across it for sure. If you're a fan of Sergio Aragones and his work on Groo, MAD Magazine, the various things he's done over time, the Mighty Magnor, I got a video on that one. Go check it out. There is a DC companion to this. I think it's Sergio Aragones Destroys DC. If you'd like to see a video on that one, let me know in the comments. Until next time, read your comics.